Good morning and welcome back to Training Thursday here on Gaming with ADHD, where today we're going to continue our look at the Combat Patrol magazine subscription from Hachette Publications and Games Workshop. Now, in today's video, we're looking at movement and measuring, and what we're doing is we're taking this from the actual articles in the magazine, and basically I'm going to read through it. We'll talk about it. I'll give some of my tips from 25 years of wargaming experience. And basically what I'm trying to do, if you're new here, is relearn how to play 40K. I haven't played really since like 5th or 6th edition. And so just kind of getting back into it with 10th. So with that said, do make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I try to put out a few videos each week covering all sorts of tabletop gaming content. I'd love for you to come along and see what we have to share. So, that out of the way, let's get started. All right, movement and measuring. In Warhammer 40,000, players move their units to secure key objectives, find defensive ground, or to seek the best possible position from which to attack the enemy. Some units are swift, while others are lumbering, but all follow the same rules for movement. Here, you'll learn the basics of moving. Measurements in inches. All measurements in games of Warhammer 40,000 are made in inches, from movement to how far your weapons can shoot. Rather than writing out inches every time, measurements are shortened to the quotation mark, so 5 quotation mark means 5 inches. Now, originally I was going to skip over this section, but surprisingly, there are people that don't necessarily know, like my son the other day, who showed me a Warhammer meme, and it was, about a 9-inch tall. It was supposed to be a Space Marine, but they used a quote instead of an apostrophe, and so therefore, anyways, I wanted to point that out. I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, basically, it's an inch system. Or imperial, depends on how you like to word it, but it's honestly not hard. Now, in this particular case, it says, from now on, you will move your units freely. You can use the ruler found in this issue to measure how far your units can move. You can also use a standard tape measure or ruler for this, provided it is marked with inches. So, real quick, I did want to point out all right, so basically this is what they're talking about. This is the ruler that they give you. They also include this with things like their starter sets. I actually kind of like it. I like the fact that it's clear, clearly marked. I like that it has the arrows, so that especially if you are new and you're learning how to play the game, kind of implies this is the direction you're going. I also like how every other square has an alternate color, just to make it a little bit easier to read. But, let's be honest. It's going to cost you like $3. This is way bigger than it needs to be. You do not need a 16-foot tape measure. But go down to your local hardware store or Target or grocery store, whatever. You can find them literally everywhere. But get yourself a tape measure. Probably want one that's going to be about 4 feet, at least like 4 feet long. Probably longer than that, just in case. Not a whole lot of units need very long, but 16 feet is going to be kind of ridiculous. That's bigger than a table, so it doesn't matter. But you do want that because the rulers that they give you, they're going to tap out at 12 inches. So while they look nice, a lot of stuff is going to shoot farther than 12 inches. Your bolt rifles are, I believe, 30 inches typically. So you're going to want something a little bit longer. Now, one tip for your tape measure, if you can find one that has inches and centimeters, those are really good to find. You don't find them all the time. Usually you're going to find, depending on where you're located, you'll find just inches or just centimeters. But if you can find one with both, it's really good, because there are games that use centimeters instead, especially when it's like very, very small scale. So having both available on the same tape measure is kind of handy. So there's my tip there. All right. Let's see. The ruler is broken into 12 1-inch chunks. It is transparent, meaning you can hold it over your models and measure the distance between them. To measure distances longer than 12 inches, measure the full distance of the ruler, place a dice or marker at that point, then pick up the ruler and continue measuring from that point. Yes, you can do that, but it's annoying. Go get yourself a tape measure. All right, model bases. Models in Warhammer 40,000 come in all shapes and sizes, but their bases are standardized. All measurements are made from a model's base, and measurements between two models are made between the closest points of their bases. You're not measuring towards swords or wings or horns or claws or whatever. You are measuring from one base to the other base. The models look fun and dynamic and interesting, but technically the base represents the area which the model actually occupies. So just remember that. You are always measuring from base to base. All right, movement and coherency. All right, whether they are marching Space Marines or skittering Termagants, units in Warhammer 40,000 all move in similar ways following similar rules. In this guide, you'll learn the basics of moving your models and how to keep your larger units in coherency during your combat patrol battles. So, on your data sheet, you will find in the M value, that is the movement value for your particular unit. Every unit in the Warhammer 40,000 has a movement characteristic noted under M on their data sheet. Infernus Marines, for example, move 6 inches, while Terminators are slowed by their heavy armor, and so have a movement characteristic of 5 inches. All right, moving models. Moving your models is simple. When it's time to move a unit, move each model in that unit in any direction. Ensure that no part of that model's base moves more than the model's total move characteristic. You can move up to the model's move characteristic, but you're also welcome to move less. Models can change direction and rotate on their bases freely while you move them. So, it doesn't cost you anything to change your facing. There are games like Battletech, which I cover on this channel quite a decent amount, but you don't have to do that. You can turn and move at will. But, as it says, you're going to... let me rephrase that. As it shows here, so we're going to start at the base edge of the model, and in this case, he's moving 5 inches. So you're going to move the base edge, to that 5-inch line. Okay. One thing I will point out, and this is kind of one of the unsavory things, it is very common for people to cheat during the movement phase. Okay. Whether it's because they, instead of moving, it has a movement value of 6 inches, but they move 6 1/4. Doesn't seem like a lot, but at this scale, 1/4 of an inch is quite a bit of distance. Okay. Or one of the more common things is, instead of measuring from front of base to front of base while they're moving. So remember, when you're figuring out the distance between models, you want the closest edge of your base to the closest edge of their base. Okay. Whereas when you're moving, you're always going to measure from the same location, either the front of the base or the back of the base. Don't ever try and measure from the middle of the base. Okay. Again, this is one of the most common and easy ways to cheat. Okay. Call your opponent on it. Don't be afraid to do it. Shame them into following the rules. Okay. So either start with the back, so you could put your ruler here at the back of the model, or put it at the front. Okay, doesn't matter. Take your pick. That's up to you. But whichever one you use, you measure to the same point. So if you start at the back, you're going to measure to the back. If you start at the front, you're going to measure to the front. Okay, so again, you're allowed to move less than your total movement value. So if they don't have to move in full inch increments, they can move 5.5 inches. But as long as, we're just going to say front of base, as long as the front of their base where they started measuring doesn't pass that 6-inch line, they're perfectly fine. Okay. And you're perfectly fine. So measure from always from the same spot. Don't measure from the middle of the model. Too easy to cheat that way. And don't move farther than you're allowed to. All right, unit coherency. Whoop, too far. Units of multiple models must stick together on the battlefield. This is referred to as unit coherency in the rules. Whenever you deploy a unit and whenever all the models in that unit have finished moving, each of those models must be within 2 inches of at least one other model in their unit. Okay, so we have our handy little diagram. We've got a unit of 5 Infernus Marines. They are all within 2 inches of each other. I believe in larger units, you have to also be within 2 inches. So like 6 or more models, you have to actually, each individual model has to be within 2 inches of 2 models. But for the purposes of this, especially because no unit has more than 5 models in, wait, no, some of the termagants have 10. I was wrong. I think we'll get into it in a second then, so give me just a minute. But basically, each model has to be within 2 inches of another. Essentially, it represents squad coherency. You can't let one guy in your squad just kind of wander off on his own. So everybody has to stay close together. If you accidentally move a unit out of coherency, put all the models back to where they were before the move and try moving them again. Now, I'm going to kind of push back on this. Okay. Let's see. All right. So what I have here is a set of 5 Infernus Marines. Now, my personal recommendation, like I hate that the way that they worded that. Okay. If you accidentally move a unit out of coherency, put all the models back where they were before the move and try moving them again. All right, unless you have literally marked where all of your models were, nobody's going to do this, okay? It is impossible. You will not get your models back to where they were. What did I say just a couple minutes ago? Moving is the easiest place and most common place for people to cheat in this game, okay? So, what I always recommend in this particular case, and we're just going to say we're moving 3 inches. So here's another thing. As you're putting your ruler down, as you can see, I'm bumping this Marine. So be very careful. Let's say we're going to start here, and we're just moving 2 inches. So he comes up, put the base down, pull my ruler out. There, he's 2 inches away. Okay? And it is not that difficult to take your ruler and move each of your models the same way. Occasionally you are going to bump models. It's fine. Do your best not to, and do your best to correct it if you do. Okay. So, there, we've moved everybody 2 inches. We can also check and make sure that everybody is within 2 inches. Okay. Everybody is. So our coherency is fine. But move your models one at a time. Okay. It's not a problem. Feel free to measure each one. Okay. And just get it there. If not, chances are you can slide them around a little bit and still be roughly within the same movement that you already made, but get your models into coherency. Last thing that I will point out is sometimes you will see people, so like they will move the first model and then they'll just kind of like grab everything and kind of move. That's not good either. Okay? Take your time, go slow, measure each of your units. Don't cheat, especially when it's easy to do. And, well, let me rephrase that. When it can be very obvious because you think it's super easy and I'm just going to take a little bit extra movement. Don't do it. Play the game according to the rules. All right, there's my rant on measuring your models. All right, so continuing. The battlefields of the 41st millennium are littered with obstacles. A cunning general must know how to maneuver around all of them. In this guide, you'll learn how to move your units. Where you can move. Units can generally move freely across the battlefield. However, your movement may never pass through an enemy model within engagement range of an enemy model or off the table. Generally speaking, you cannot move through solid terrain pieces either, although certain advanced rules let infantry models move through ruins, woods, things like that. Okay, so in this particular case, we've got our squad of Infernus Marines. They cannot leave the battlefield. Okay, a lot of games, if your models are forced off the battlefield, essentially they will count as destroyed or routed, or they're fleeing, something like that. So yes, it is a little bit less abstract than actual warfare is, but it is a game. Okay, so that's why the rules are always your models stay on the battlefield. Sometimes you will have some special rules, but the general rule is stay on the board. All right. In this particular case, you cannot move through enemies. Okay. This is a Tyrannid Prime. Why is it going to let the Infernus Marines walk right through it? Okay. You can't. So in this particular case, moving straight ahead is pretty much the only thing these Infernus Marines can do if they're trying to move in a forward direction. All right, engagement range. Every model in Warhammer 40,000 has a 1-inch bubble around it representing its engagement range. You cannot ordinarily move into the engagement range of an enemy model, but you can pass through the engagement range of friendly models with no restrictions. The only way to get into the engagement range of a foe is by charging. You'll learn more about this in a future video. All right, so basically, like I said, the base represents the actual area that the model occupies. So 1 inch from the base edge is the engagement area. Keep, if it's not your model, keep your models out of it. Okay. If it is your model, well, then don't move it in such a way that you are too close to any enemy models. Okay. All right, moving units. While it might seem complex, moving units will be second nature after a few games. When moving units, ensure no model moves further than its move characteristic, that you stay out of the engagement range of enemy units, that you don't move through any terrain or other units, and that the unit finishes their move as a single coherent group. Okay, so in this case, everybody's all nice and tight when they start. They're all nice and tight when they end. Not always the best thing to do. You don't want your guys all crammed up together. But, again, be consistent with how you're moving it, and you'll be fine. All right, weapons and threat ranges. Positioning is key for warfare in the 41st millennium. Commanders must consider that more than the weapons the troops are armed with, but where the foe will be and which points on the battlefield they must seize to press the greatest advantage. In this guide, you'll learn about weapon ranges and threat ranges. All right, weapon ranges. All ranged weapons, from pyre blasters to flesh borers, have a range characteristic, which tells you how far they can shoot. You can find this on the datasheet of the model wielding that weapon. Your units can attack an enemy unit with a ranged weapon if any part of their base is within the weapon's range. So, in this particular case, the Infernus Marine has a pyre blaster with a range of 12 inches. The winged Tyrannid Prime is within the 12 inches, therefore it can be shot. The Von Ryan's Leapers are more than 12 inches away. They cannot be shot. It's really not more difficult than that. Threat ranges and line of sight. It's helpful to think of all your units as having a threat range. This is not only the distance from which they can attack, but the distance from which they can attack if they moved beforehand, or the distance they would need to move to get around an obstacle that was blocking their line of sight before attacking. So, in this particular case, the Infernus Marine cannot shoot the Tyrannid Prime because he's behind this Tyrannid infestation token thing. Now, for combat patrol, they basically give some little card terrain pieces. They're flat. They don't actually block anything. But that's kind of the thing with war games. Sometimes you have to abstract these things. So basically what they're saying is, okay, you can't shoot 12 inches through the terrain because the terrain is blocking. However, if he makes a 6-inch movement and gets a different angle, surprise, the prime is now within 12 inches and can be attacked. So it is one of the keys to the game, moving your models around. Honestly, if you're going to get into any model wargaming game, movement is one of the key factors, because it otherwise you're just lining everything up, and it's kind of like those like, this is not a game of crossbows and catapults. Set everything up and then just start throwing things at the opposing side. You have to move, you have to get into good positions, you have to make sure that the enemy doesn't get a good line of sight on you, things like that. So constantly moving is important, which again is one of the reasons why it's so common for people to cheat. No, I didn't move too far. No, I didn't move out of cover, things like that. So be an honest player. Don't cheat. Play the game. Have some fun. With that said, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up. As always, if you're new here, make sure you're subscribed. That way, you'll get additional videos as I continue through this series. Eventually we'll get into like some little mini scenarios, things like that. But I am enjoying this. I am having some fun digging through these rules. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you next time.